and to tell you guys what we are doing, what we are not doing, and where we are working on. You will see that sometimes I'm having a problem in looking is because my camera is on one side, my screen on the other one. So I'm a little bit puzzled and challenged in getting installed in my new office, and it's not always working. So when I'm not looking into the camera, I'm looking to the screen, I'm looking to the presentation, so don't think that I'm doing different things. That being said, welcome. I look forward to a very interactive discussion, look forward to have many questions, challenging questions, and the most challenging questions I will make sure that Glyn answers them on our behalf. Glyn, that being said, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Stephen. If we could go to the next slide, please, Rachel. As Stephen mentioned, we would like to keep this as open and interactive as possible. So after each section, we've allocated sufficient time for questions and answers. Please feel free to either use the chat feature or the chat function here, or raise your hand if you have a question, and we will continually monitor the situation, and then we can address those questions as they arise. What we'd like to do is talk through a little bit about how the governance and membership aspect have evolved over the last 12 months. Then our finance and strategy topics we'd like to share with you. And then most importantly, most of the time we'd like to dedicate to looking back over the last 12 months and what we have planned for the next 12 months in a number of very key areas. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. Now, of course, we don't have competitors as it were on the call, but it's always a reminder of the antitrust rules that we apply by. So we would just ask, in the context of this session, any of the questions that you raise, please should not refer specifically to any one of our members, so that we don't have to actually discuss anything that could be conceived as confidential or of a commercial nature. So I'm sure that won't really be an issue. So if we go to the next slide, please, Rachel. What we thought we would start with is just a view of the current membership profile. I think one of the key unique aspects of TIACA, as we always say, is it represents the entire supply chain. And it's really encouraging to see that the membership is actually truly spread across not just each of the sectors, but also geographically. And as you can see from this particular slide, we have a large number of freight forwarders, but we also have a growing number of airports, from airlines. And I just saw a message from Bridget. Yes, in the last 12 months, it's actually grown quite considerably. We'll have a slide in a moment looking at the growth. During the COVID time of 2020 was probably the most difficult time for the industry, as really people didn't know what they were dealing with. And TIACA did suffer a slight drop in membership. In 2021, we actually saw quite a solid rebound. And now we're actually pulling, I think we've had 6 new members since the start of this year. And again, it's very pleasing to see that it's coming from across the sectors, and again, across from the globe. And we'll talk a little bit more about geography a little bit later on. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Rachel. This is exactly to the point, Bridget, you were saying, is in the last 12 months, we've actually had 9 new trustees. And as you know, trustees is the highest level of premium membership of people that can join TIACA. They get the full rights, as it were, of voting rights. They can become board members, and they are most engaged with the association. So this has actually been a very significant step forward, that the number of organizations that are really looking at TIACA, re-looking at TIACA, wanting to play a part going forward. If we could go to the next slide, or perhaps, Stephen, you'd like to make a comment about the membership in general?
Yeah. Like you said, Glyn, I think 2 encouraging things is, first of all, membership is growing again. I think that's a very clear signal, despite sometimes the difficult situation. I think the most important one for me, however, is that we see for the first time in more than 10 years, the number of trustees growing again, and significantly. This is the highest amount of new trustees that we have seen in I think in almost the last 20 years of TIACA. So the fact that companies are not only willing to come on board as a member, but already sometimes from the day one as a trustee member, and at the same time we see members upgrading to trustee, I think that's a very confident and encouraging signal for us that they're trusting again what TIACA is doing. So very happy to see that.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. One of the areas that the board has focused on since the transformation is, the slide's not moved forward yet, Rachel. Thank you, is the classification and the potential categories. So this again has been revised to the point now, and this is what Stephen was saying, is that trustees, of course, are the ones that have the most privileges within the organisation because of their ability to join the board and vote on changes to bylaws and procedures and policies. But we're also seeing growth in the corporate sector. Very encouraged to see the number of startup and small businesses that have actually joined in the last 12 months. And this is an area we hope to encourage and nurture going forward, utilising really the TIACA network aspect so we can actually connect these small startup businesses with more established businesses and help progress innovation and overall development and growth of the industry. We will always focus on affiliates and working with relationships and partnerships where they can add value to the membership. And again, we extend as much possible outreach to shippers and NGOs, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about partnerships later on. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. So that was really just a quick snapshot of the membership aspect and of the growth. And I'll just pause for a minute in case there are any specific questions. I see no hands, so that's good. So let's move on now to the next section, which if I can hand over to...
Maybe add something, Glyn, is that to everybody, please use the chat box. Drop any question in there. We will answer them straight away or during the question breaks we have. But also everybody feel free to jump in during that moment as well.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, Stephen, if I can hand over to you, because I think this is an area, again, where you've been driving quite a bit through with the board in the last 12 months.
Yeah, thanks, Glyn. When we did the whole transformation, it was not only about giving TIACA, again, the purpose for this industry and for the members. It was also make sure that we could financially survive. TIACA has not been doing really well in the last 10 years, and everybody knows that. And if we only going to show Glyn, that's not going to help our financial performance.
I think we might.
Luckily, it's not for members, but just for the press. That's not good. But I'll continue talking. I hope that Rachel comes back with the presentation. So we also want to make sure that we started growing again TIACA. I think that one of the things TIACA was slowly doing, but we were trying to save ourselves to that by bit and bit cutting, and not in the fat anymore, but in the meat. And it's really great to see that this change on direction also resulted in a better financial performance. It was also the aim which TIACA did in the past, was one very profitable year and then 1 year where we were loss making when it was a non-ACF year, and we were very depending on the ACF, where we said no, we want to be more diverse on our revenues. We want to be profitable every year, not very profitable 1 year, very loss-making the other year. That's not a sustainable model. Those are the things we changed. Also to make sure that we put our finances to our strategy. As part of the governance, we really made, we call him still the Director General, but I said it from the beginning last year, we see him also as the CEO. That gives ownership to the Director General to make sure that the budget goes to where the strategy goes, and that we as a board are not going to be involved in the day-to-day business, but really in the supervision of the activities of TIACA. We also insourced quite some activities, not only functions like a treasurer, but also the marketing function, the finance function, just to have a better control and to be more on top and more involvement from us as a board to the whole operation. We've been very ambitious on the financial forecasting, saying that in 2021, which was still like an in-between year towards the longer term profitability, where 2021 was still predicted to be loss-making, and as of 2020 that we would be profitable every year. We also stopped making a budget just for 1 year. We are now looking 3 years ahead, just to make sure that every activity we do, we look at it long term and the impact long term. So it's very encouraging that despite a COVID year and a very difficult year and also a first year, that we indeed managed to do 2021 better than budgeted. And also 2020, we see again
sorry, that's
a good
an
forecast where we will probably
2022, Stephen. Sorry.
Sorry, 2022. I'm reading what you write on the years, of course, 2022. Thanks for mentioning that, Glyn. So 2022 budget is also looking promising, better than we had anticipated in our transformation plan. And very important, it's not just the bottom line that is doing better, but it's also the top line that gives us that possibility to invest that will do better. Because for the first time, 2022 is going to be again a year of big investments in content for our members. But Glyn, I'll let you talk more about that later on. In a summary, we are very happy with the financial performance. We are very happy with the outlook, and that is going to give us possibilities for the future. I think that is my main message.
Great, thank you, Stephen, and apologies for that. It's because Rachel dropped off. I've actually sharing the presentation, so it was corrected in the final version. So unfortunately, what it means, Stephen, is I can't see the action line for hands up or chat because it's on a presentation view. So if
I'll
you could
be your assistant for a while, and yeah.
Thank you. So with that, I don't know if there's any questions on the financial aspect. Okay, so let me go through quickly then to the next bit. The industry priorities, these are not new this year. These are ones that were agreed last year, so it's just really reaffirming that the key priorities as TIACA sees is related to enhancing and furthering the role of digitalization in the industry, placing sustainability at the heart of what we do as an industry and as an association, our part in driving that forward. Always focusing on the role of partnerships and collaborative activity. We see this as crucial, particularly as the industry has to become more complex and is more reliant on each other, both within the supply chain and with those outside of the supply chain, such as regulators, etc. We also see that safety and security...
Glyn, can I interrupt you? Glyn, just on your display settings, and I don't want to make it too technical and start making a joke, but the presentation screen that is showing now is also showing the display settings that you have the next slide as well. It's not just showing your slide. I don't know if you know or if you can change it. Normally on top with the display settings you should be able to do it.
I think it's because I have two screens that I think...
If not, leave it then...
No, well, what we have is we have something which is actually even better than that, which is called Rachel has swapped. So Rachel is back.
Perfect.
And now, exactly. So that's actually just demonstrating how quickly we can actually transfer. Now, of course, I've lost me. I have to come back. Okay, now I'm back. We said we wanted to be transparent. So this is actually part of seeing the inner workings of TIACA, which is Rachel makes things happen. So going through the industry priorities again, thank you, Stephen, for that. So we have safety and security, and these are in no order of priority. These are just the 6 or 7 areas that the association places at the heart of the work plan. Also liberalization, more important now than ever, particularly with the continued restrictions on the passenger networks. We also see that the role of enhancing the awareness of the value that air cargo brings beyond the boundaries of this industry is also critically important, particularly as aviation restarts. And training, it's a key aspect for this industry, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Rachel. And just one more click, I think actually just completes the picture on this slide. One of the things that we said last year and came about as a result of the transformation is that the board really wanted to make TIACA a members association. And much of what we've focused on the last 12 months, and I think this is also attributed to why we've got such solid growth, is making sure that all of the members of TIACA are connected and are included. And we've engaged in a lot of additional activities to make sure that everybody's informed and involved. We have a number of newsletters. We've started a new feature now, which is weekly. We try and actually, we call it Members in the News, and we will just use LinkedIn and other vehicles to promote the great work that the members are doing and all the progress that they're making in their business development. So we've enhanced our social media presence. We continue to upgrade the member tool to facilitate business connectivity and an information repository. So there's a lot of member sharing of information, whether or not it's economic data or other things that they use that repository. We had a very successful trustee meetup, which we will continue to do at industry events, where both TIACA events and other industry events is where we have a number of trustees in the audience. Is then we will take them off and get their thoughts and their views on the organisation. Again, that was a very engaging session we had in Dublin. We will continue with our cluster sessions, which are a way of focusing each of our verticals within the association and getting that intelligence from each of the members in that particular sector. And two new things for this year. Number one, as we said, that we have a very strong regional presence. We also recognize that it's difficult for us, based in either Miami or Geneva, to actually constantly be in touch with members around the globe. And there's also sometimes language issues, for example. So the board has actually approved that during the course of this year, we will be expanding our organization so that we will actually have some regional representation. In much the same way that a GHA is a wonderful opportunity and a GSA for organizations to represent entities. And I see from the question, we've actually highlighted that we will focus, particularly at the moment, on China, on Latin America, Africa, as the three key areas where membership would benefit from having a regional representative. So we will be looking to see how we can actually recruit and bring on board as an extension of the TIACA team, and a way of actually engaging more with the local community, and also help us in our engagement with governments and regulators and other industry events, etc. So that's very exciting for this year. And an extension of that is we're also looking at holding perhaps some more, or in fact we will hold one this year and hopefully add a few more each year thereafter, what we're calling regional symposiums, where we would actually focus on a particular region and really have it as a way of engaging with the memberships, bringing the TIACA activity and industry speakers out on a local basis, not as a large-scale commercial event, but much more of a small, intimate membership-type meeting, and a way of, again, keeping everybody involved in the association's activities. Stephen, would you like to add anything more to that?
No, and again, we are a members organization. We had our first trustee meetup during the World Cargo Symposium in Dublin. It was really, really positive. And this direct interaction is going to become more and more important. Hence, all these initiatives to be closer to our members and to strengthen our presence globally. Yeah.
And to Bridget's question, the regional representation, it would absolutely be a local representative, so that they could actually communicate with the community in the local language, and we would ask them also to make sure that they would do local language newsletters, etc. We feel that it's important, if we truly want to become a member-centric association that is actually for the members, run by the members, and for the benefit of the members. So if we can go on to the...
Bridget, if I can answer that question to Bridget, is that we asked Glyn to learn Spanish and Chinese, and this is when he came up with this idea of regional representation as a solution for him learning all the languages. So,
well, I have to be honest, this is a self-admission. I'm still struggling with learning English, and I've been practicing this now for more than half a century, and I still struggle. Somebody asked me the other day to describe the English language with the word queue, which is the letter Q followed by 4 silent letters. I couldn't explain that. So if we could actually go to the next slide then, please, Rachel. So as we said, we really wanted to focus most of today on some of the highlights of the last 12 months and what we can expect going forward. We've already covered, if you click just one more, Rachel, you'll see that we've already covered really the first 4 items. So for the next session, we're going to focus on sustainability, how the association responded during COVID, what we're doing for information education outreach, our advocacy positions, the value we place on partnerships, and then, of course, our event strategy. So if we could go through to the next slide, please. I think you'll need one more click. That's it. Sustainability is one of the core focus areas for the association. It's obviously extremely important for society and extremely important for the industry. And we really look at our role as helping the industry define and educate on what it all means. As we've already shared earlier, that we define sustainability as the 3 Ps, which is looking at people, planet, and prosperity. And it's backed up by innovation and partnerships. What we also want to do after we can help the industry define and educate is look at how they can measure where they are. We like to use the association to showcase and recognize the great results. We hopefully then will use that to inspire further action. And of course, part of our role going forward will be to providing support and materials and tools to help the industry through its transformation, sustainability transformation journey. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. You're all very familiar with the Sustainability Awards. We say stay tuned because later on in the presentation, we will be announcing the winner of the Corporate Award and the 3 finalists of the Startup Small Business category. And all of the award winners will, of course, be invited to San Francisco for the Executive Summit, where we will actually be presenting and holding an award ceremony for the corporate winner. And the finalists, the 3 finalists, will then present their ideas, and the audience there will actually vote. And those results will be added to the judges' views to award an ultimate winner in that category as well. Again, we appreciate the support that we get from Champ Cargo Systems in providing this program. If we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. One of the key aspects that we've engaged in the last 2 years is the industry survey looking at sustainability, which then results in the annual report. We will be releasing the annual report next week, but we have a number of key slides that we'd like to share with you today to give you, as it were, and an early heads up. So Eric, if you have a question, please either use the chat box or let me give you the floor now if you have a question you'd like to raise. I'm not sure if you're on mute still, Eric. Or did you want to write the question? We can tackle it in 1 of 2 ways. Okay.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. So just some highlights now of the actual survey. First of all, we were very pleased to see that the 2nd edition of the survey saw a 62% increase in respondents. And I'd like to thank a number of our media friends out there who helped promote this during the survey open period. I think that also reflects how the industry is taking sustainability on board as a central theme as well, and that they're placing a lot more value on it. What's really encouraging is that we actually had a 74% increase in what we would call our core group. And the core group is the freight forwarders, airlines, airports, and ground handlers. And you can see the numbers from this chart to show that we're getting quite a sizable number of submissions or survey results from that sector, from those sectors, which means the results are quite meaningful and quite well dispersed. Majority of the respondents were large organizations, but again, it was encouraging to see that there was a good cross-section. So we had 30% small businesses and nearly 20% medium-sized. So it is getting a good cross-section of the whole industry, which is what we need to make sure that the results that we publish are then meaningful across the board. The majority of the respondents were from Europe, and then the Americas, Asia, and Africa and the Middle East were the smaller category, but again, it was pleasing to see that we've got we've got all geographic regions represented. So if we go to the next slide, please, Rachel. What's really interesting about this slide is that one of the questions we asked the first time round, and the numbers that you see in the green bubbles are the changes versus the 2000 survey, so the first survey, and you'll see that it's more of a rebalancing, which is interesting. At the very beginning, the majority of the respondents said that they were doing it for customers and employees. And what we're now seeing is that the role of shareholders and regulators is also starting to play a large part, particularly when people are going to the financial markets, is that some of these sustainability credentials are having an impact on their ability to access finance because of the overall aspect of CSR and ESG, etc. So that there is a very strong awareness across all sectors and across all businesses that they're doing it for the right reasons for all of the people that they actually engage with. So next slide, please, Rachel. And what was also encouraging is, and perhaps we should probably have reflected this the other way, is that only 15% of the respondents felt that COVID actually reduced the focus on sustainability and had a negative impact on sustainability over this last year, which means that whilst the industry was dealing with the very difficult circumstances that COVID threw at the industry and at society, they were still able to focus on sustainability going forward, which again just reinforces that it is playing a larger part and will continue to play a larger part going forward. Next slide, please, Rachel. What's really interesting about this particular slide is the fact that nearly 100%, so 93% of all respondents said that sustainability is supported at the very highest level in their organization. This is crucial. You know, it's the number one aspect when you say what is one of the key successful ingredients for any initiative that an organization or an industry is going through, is getting buy-in at the top. So that bodes very well. The fact that then 81% of organizations have placed sustainability as a strategic priority is also crucial. Nearly 3/4 have a strategy in place. The difficulty that we see is that probably the last two questions here, which is only 52% have dedicated resources and only 37% have a dedicated budget. And both of those have contracted versus the first survey. Now, we hope that's just a reflection of the fact that the last 12 months have been so incredibly taxing for the industry that it's meant that priorities have had to be redeployed elsewhere. So we would hope to see that rebound as we get into post-COVID times. Next slide, please, Rachel. And again, just breaking that one slightly further in terms of the companies, 73%, as I mentioned, have a sustainability strategy, and it's nicely spread across the board. You know, the range is very close, so it's again great to show that all sectors are taking this seriously. Similar to, as we said before, 85%, so the larger corporations obviously have invested probably more in this. They've got more resources they can dedicate, but it's nice to see that both medium and small companies are still focusing on this as an important aspect going forward. And again, same for across the region. So it really is something that the whole industry is taking to heart as a priority. Next slide, please, Rachel. And we will share the slides, I think, after the presentation. So if there's some charts that we're going through very quickly, you will have this material that you can actually refer to if you wish later on in your writings. One of the areas which was interesting as well is the fact that we all know, particularly over the last 2 years, the tremendous value that air cargo brings to the global community. And it's true, the survey, well, one of the aspects of the survey indicated that whilst people were aware of the impact, they weren't necessarily aware of the role that they could play on increasing the awareness of that impact. And I think this is actually a very strong indicator of the role that we can play as TIACA, as making sure that the world can continue to focus not just the business community, but society and regulators on the overall value that air cargo brings. One of the statistics that we used quite regularly last year in our discussions with governments, and particularly some ministers, is we looked at the value contribution to a national economy derived from the export of cargo through aviation versus the value of inbound tourism, not during COVID times, but pre-COVID times. Pre-COVID times, The global value, and these are numbers that IATA published, the global value of inbound tourism aggregated to $850 billion worldwide. In that same time frame, in those same countries, the value that those countries earned from exporting cargo via air was $6.4 trillion. It was 8 times more than the total value of inbound tourism. Now, during COVID, that multiplier went out to 20. It was $7 trillion last year versus only $350 billion in inbound tourism. But going forward, the projection is that it's going to be at least an 8 times multiplier. And again, we use that as an important factor to try and educate governments that they should have pro-supportive air cargo regulations in place, because the growth to their economy and the prosperity of their citizens is very much linked to the success of air cargo. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Rachel. We've always maintained that digitalization is a core component of any sustainable strategy, not just from the fact that more efficient operations tend to have a greener and a less impacting footprint, but it also enables them to become more prosperous, and more prosperous organizations lead to a more prosperous industry, more prosperous society, and they can invest more in sustainable developments. And we're very pleased to see again that these 2 significant steps forward in organizations seeking improvement in operational excellence through digitalization, and others with accelerating the program, both moved forward. Next slide, please, Rachel. Just a couple more slides. I'd like to focus on the sustainability survey. As I say, the full report will come out next week. This really reinforces the fact that the respondents felt that nurturing partnerships, both business partnerships and contributions through industry collaboration, etc., will help drive this initiative forward. And this is where we really see a role that we can play as TIACA in helping solidify the relationships across the industry, and by making sure that we can work collaboratively with other associations in driving initiatives forward. Next slide, please, Rachel. This is one of probably the area that was very well received, received most increase, which was the focus on people. Now, we know over the last 2 years, there's been lots of attention to regards to the difficulty of retaining staff members in some places due to COVID restrictions and others. But just in general terms, challenges on the workforce have been increasing over the last several years. So more and more organizations have been looking at how can they actually attract, retain, and develop their workforce. And this is really bearing out in terms of the survey results, with a huge increase in organizations that are looking at improving the employee experience, education and training, and how they can actually move forward with diversity and inclusivity. So I think that this is actually a very positive and great step forward, and we look forward to working with the industry of how we can help support those aspirations. Next slide, please, Rachel. So that was it for the survey. As I say, the full report will be published next week. I'll pause there, Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to add some comments on the survey, or if there's any specific questions.
Nothing I would like to add, but I see that there's a question coming in. Yes, but when you finish, there's a few questions, Glyn, in the chat box. I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah,
it's more about Ukraine. So let's do them at the end, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll save the Ukraine question to the end, because I think it's obviously very important. We should start by saying that it was very sad news that we all woke up to this morning, and we hope that the situation can resolve itself with minimal loss to life and people's way of living, etc. All airspace obviously has been closed, but let's save that to the end. We published the roadmap last year. This is something we were very excited as well. This is actually the first time the industry has a roadmap which actually can help organizations through that sustainability transformation process. If we go to the next slide, please, Rachel. And the roadmap really highlights 8 key objectives, a number of them addressing both the environment, society, and culture. And it's something that is something that's very crucial for the industry to actually tackle. So it's our role to kind of help guide. So we were publishing the roadmap, and we will update it and continue to make it available to the industry, not just to TIACA members, but to the broader industry. And if we go on to the next slide, please, Rachel. And something that's exciting that's going to be coming up later on this year is what we hope to do next, because the roadmap does actually include then 30 actionable priorities. And these are very specific, tangible actions that organizations can take in each of those 8 key objective areas. And what we are working on now is looking at a series of tools which will actually help organizations assess where they are in their sustainability transformation. And it goes into quite a lot of detail. And once they have assessed themselves, they can actually then hopefully seek some more objective or subjective assessment through independent associations such as TIACA, where we can actually then help organizations with a personalized scorecard. So this is something that we're working on, and we hopefully will announce, we will announce further details during the executive summit. Again, this is part of our role of providing supporting tools and materials to help the industry in its journey. We can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. One other area that came about, actually it was last year's survey, was the fact that there's lots of initiatives that are underway in the industry, but not a lot of information was related to, well, which ones should organizations focus on? Where can they go to get some of the facts, etc.? So this year we will be spending quite a bit of time actually trying to create some clarity in this area. And again, providing some information about each of the various initiatives, doing some research on carbon offsetting as well. If we can go on to the next slide, please, Rachel. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to log all these questions and I'll tackle these as well at the end. One other area which is very important, as we've mentioned before, is the training side. And during the course of COVID, there has been an impact in the training activity. Traditional reliance on classroom-based training, I think, has absolutely evolved into much more virtual, online, modular, as it were, and broken down into different modules and aspects. And one role that we've been asked to play going forward, which is something which we're very excited about, is how can we actually help our members and help the broader community in getting access to advanced training or enhanced training, particularly as it moves to a more digital platform. So we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. So we're very pleased that the board actually has signed off on a project this year where we will actually be introducing a central training repository. We won't be providing the training. We don't feel that that's our role. We have one training course now, which, as you're familiar, we do with ICAO, Safe Supply Chain. But we absolutely see our role as being able to provide a central conduit or a repository, allowing entities to get access to training that they may have not otherwise got access to. So it's very much about providing a vehicle for people to list the various training programs that they've got, highlighting what delivery channels there are, what the content is, location and accessibility. And as I say, this is something that will certainly help our members in their investment in people strategies. So we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. And then lastly, in our area of sustainability, and you can see we've got quite a large program here, is where we're working very closely with IATA and FIATA on our various portfolios of sustainability initiatives to see where we can actually add value to each other. And we started that identification process during the IATA World Cargo Symposium in Dublin, and we will continue that work throughout this year as a way of leveraging the various initiatives. So that's a very quick run through of some of the sustainability aspects. Stephen, would you like to comment, or we go to the questions on this?
I think you have explained it very well, Glyn, so thanks. And I don't see any questions in the chat box. Just maybe give it 10 seconds if anybody wants to ask a question, then it's also the moment to do. Go ahead, Glyn.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, please, Rachel? Thank you. So what we would actually say is, with regards to the overall sustainability plan, and this is just the last slide on this, is that we would urge people to set specific targets if they haven't done so already. We would urge people to measure those, communicate on the achievements with total transparency, and then seek to get recognition for the results that they've achieved. I think this is something that every organization should set about as a minimum. So with that, we can go into the next section, please, Rachel. Okay, we pause so we can move on one, please. Very quickly, I wanted to run through what we did during the last 12 months. As you know, we've had a very successful relationship with atn.aero for the last couple of years. We published some material. I think we might need 2 more clicks. We published, first of all, a white paper on the vaccine itself, then the second white paper on the handling requirements and recommendations and how the role of communities, airport communities and air cargo communities was crucial in the successful delivery. And we followed that up with the vaccine newsletter, which has been a monthly newsletter feed of the latest information with regards to vaccines getting approval, production sites, volumes, where the orders are going, to help the industry prepare for those particular transport requirements when they came up. And we have continually engaged with UNICEF, who's leading the work for the COVAX facility, and ensuring that we can communicate with our members, and not just the airlines, but all of the infrastructure providers as well, because what happens to the vaccine on the ground is as important as what happens to the vaccine between airport origin and airport destination. So we've been very pleased, and again, we're very thankful for UNICEF to reaching out, and we have regular dialogue discussions with UNICEF, and we hope to further develop that relationship once COVID has actually become just consigned to the history books. So we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. I'll pause once again for any questions.
Maybe you should make a bit more suggestions without saying everything, Glyn, and then the questions will come automatically. Give some blunt answers.
I have no hair. I can't even remember what color it was. Actually, I was when I was younger. Although I did, when my hair started falling out, I did go to the doctor and ask him if he got anything to help keep my hair in. So he gave me a bag. I'm sure everybody's on.
Okay, go ahead. Continue with the
next slide, please. As we've mentioned as well, part of our outreach is very much about information, education, and outreach. We're very pleased we have a very solid relationship with Clive Data Systems. Even though it's now been purchased by Xenita, we will still keep up our briefs that we send to our members and our webinars that we hold. We have the course that we do with ICAO. Something new for this year is we'll be launching a Value of Air Cargo campaign, hopefully in partnership with a number of the international organizations that we're in discussions with, as a way of making sure that global society continues to focus on the value that air cargo brings. And it will help regulators as they go through to understand that this is a critically important part of commercial aviation. We continue with our newsletters and our outreach programs to schools, to high schools, to tech colleges, to universities, etc. And I mentioned the training repository. We do see this as an important role, is our role, as it were, of the voice of the industry, communicating to help that next generation, and not just the next generation, but the broader community, about the value and the role that this industry plays. So next slide, please, Rachel. And the next one. Right, I just wanted to share with you some of the key advocacy positions. One of the things that the board reinforced at the very beginning is they said, we want to make a difference, which means if there are issues which are common and of interest to the broad and the total membership, then we would like the TIACA voice to be heard. So we've really broken these down into 3 areas, looking at safety, security, then efficiency, and then the innovation and development activity. So if we go to the next slide, please, safety and security. There are really 3 key positions that we take up here, and we bring this through as often as we can to the various regulators and those who can actually implement and effect change. First one is, if we go back a slide. The first one is very much a consistent message, which is about urging governments to take action against rogue manufacturers of counterfeit lithium batteries. Sadly, not a week goes by where we don't read of another incident, whether or not it's on a ship, a truck, thankfully not recently in a plane, but on the ground, in facilities, whether or not it's going through mail, etc. And this is sadly only going to get worse as the number of units and devices with lithium batteries increases, and therefore more counterfeit production takes place. We also call upon states to enhance education and awareness measures for all entities involved in cross-border trade. If you look at the amount of e-commerce platforms and providers and shippers who are now accessing global markets, they all need to be aware of the regulations that are in place. And as the industry becomes more complex, it's important that states actually have measures to actually ensure that they educate people adequately on what is required for compliance. And we also call upon ICAO and member states to work with industry on an overall strategic growth plan for air cargo. It's not sufficient just to say, well, let's set a plan in place for the passenger industry and cargo can live with that. We need different focused regulations for safety, for security, because our role at the end of the day collectively is to help facilitate trade. So those are three key ones for safety and security. If we can go into the next slide, please, Rachel. With regards to efficiency, we joined with the Global Express Association last year, made a presentation to 80 ministers during the ICAO high-level COVID conference. And again, they came up with a declaration which we influenced, and we urge all states to adopt that. We also urge states to liberalize much more or an accelerated basis now, particularly with Seventh Freedom adoptions, which allows the increase in freighter fleets, which we're seeing weekly coming on stream, to be able to deploy it in the most efficient and effective manner possible, particularly whilst passenger networks are still so severely restricted or contracted versus before. Also, something that we would urge states to do is adopt public health corridors. Too many aircrew were subject to confinement in overseas locations because people didn't know how to deal with aircrew, and they were being subject to, in quite difficult circumstances in some cases. So there has been a number of great pieces of work by the ICAO CAPSCO group or the UN CAPSCO group, and this is really about establishing safe health corridors for crew members, particularly air cargo. And even though we could see hopefully the end of COVID in sight, we need to future-proof against further outbreaks going forward in any form. And we also call upon regulators to look at multimodal standards. Interoperability is something that's going to increase going forward. And we would then urge the industry to embrace and implement smart data sharing principles so that efficiency, reliability, and transparency can be enhanced. So then if we go to the next slide, please, Rachel. And we have two in the innovation and development area. We support and welcome all of the developments in the unmanned aerial systems and the remotely piloted aircraft systems or aerial systems developments. And here is where we'd like to urge national and international bodies, again, to work with industry so that the standards and regulations can facilitate an integrated approach with established commercial solutions. And lastly, COVID sadly exposed that Africa has some infrastructure challenges on the ground. So we're working very closely with the African Airlines Association to promote the advancement of air cargo in the region, particularly focused on infrastructure. So here we're calling upon donor states and other organizations to really invest in and support projects and programs which will help address the critical developments needed to facilitate what is basically 15% of the planet's population. And whilst only 2% of their cargo emanates from Africa, it has got a young, growing, affluent workforce. And if there was a better air cargo infrastructure in place, then we could actually see the economies of Africa accelerate through into a more prosperous situation. So those are some of the key positions that we're advocating for. We can go to the next slide, please, Rachel. Stephen, if you'd like to add something here before we go to questions.
No, Glyn. Again, I think industry leadership comes with responsibilities. We want to be the organization people call when they have a question on whatever happens in the world, on air cargo globally, and I think being collaborative with other organizations and associations is going to help that. And I think that we've really stepped up on that promise this year, and it is our ambition to strengthen that even in the future. And I don't see any questions, Glyn, and since the time is ticking, suggest you continue.
Thank you, Stephen. With the next slide, please, Rachel. I'm sorry, I just saw a question coming in from Regina. Do you have any?
Do you have any launch partners? But I think, can you be a little bit more on what you mean exactly? With, do you have any launch partners, Regina? Do not hesitate to.
Okay, so I'll come back to that question
and explain.
Yeah. Okay, with the African Airlines Association. Yes, so we work very closely. We've had several meetings with the with their cargo committee and with their group and their secretariat, and we're in the process of drafting some communications where we will approach the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and other potential donor organizations. In fact, the World Bank has just published a report which highlights some of the challenges in Africa, and we want to leverage this. In the past, they have gone for as it were, a shared partnership approach, but I think with the current challenges, particularly with vaccine distribution, that we would rather be trying to encourage as many of those donor state or donor bodies as much as possible to actually help. And I think the EU also have a fund available. We would like to encourage them to actually invest in these initiatives. And in terms of where the greatest need is, it's actually throughout the entire continent. You know, I think there was a study that said that 66, if not greater percentage of all airports in Africa didn't have sufficient cold chain storage facilities to handle the majority of vaccines that could have been sent there, which delayed getting vaccines to the continent probably for about a year until there was adequate volumes of some of the vaccines which didn't require such stringent temperature control environments, which was a shame because that puts people's lives at risk. So we would actually say that all states would be potential hopeful launch targets. We just need to access international bodies that can help make that a reality. And that's really linking into the relationships here. It's what role can we play, whether or not it's with the Airport Council International, with ICAO, the GA, Pharma.aero, UNICEF, Air Forwarders Association, or TIACA. It's where the membership actually can be, or the board has tasked us to say that where we can actually bring value to the membership and value to the relationship with those partners, that we should develop them and nurture them. So going forward, we hope to accelerate that. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Rachel, because I want to have adequate time to get to these questions. I'll just go through some of the key ones. If we can go through that one, please. Next slide, please. And now it gives us great pleasure to announce, as you can see here, the 2021 Hall of Fame awardee, Glyn Fritz, who was formerly the chairman and CEO of Fritz Companies, which was sold to UPS in 2001. But Glyn didn't leave the industry at that stage. He went off and took his decades worth of innovative and leadership skills and turned that into working for the humanitarian sector. And he helped a lot of aid agencies actually bring some modern approaches and efficiencies to how they distributed aid around the planet. And he continues that work through his foundation. He and his wife have actually dedicated much time to that. So the Chairman's Council appointed Glyn as the 2021 Hall of Fame awardee, which, if I could hand over to you, Stephen, to perhaps say a few words on that.
No, I think it's a big tradition for us and an important one we want to keep to show respect and tribute people who really made a difference. I think that this year with Glyn, we once again have another remarkable person that did a great thing for the industry, but the fact that also the humanitarian aspect comes on top, I think with our sustainability focus, I think is a great fit and it's well deserved, and I really look forward being able to have him in San Francisco and thank him personally.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. And as we mentioned earlier, if we can go to the next slide, please, because we also have great pleasure to announce that the 2021 sustainability winner in the corporate category is United Airlines and United Cargo for their Eco Skies Alliance project. For those of you that aren't familiar with Eco Skies, it's actually an initiative which allows their major corporate clients to effectively pull together or club together and collectively purchase sustainable aviation fuels. So it's an aggregate SAF purchasing program, which I think the first order of SAF that they actually procured was, I believe, the largest single order of sustainable aviation fuels in the industry. And the jury said that there was a number of very, very credible, in fact, all of the submissions in the corporate category, in fact, all categories were highly commendable, but United pipped and was appointed the winner. And Stephen?
No, again, I think we were especially happy to see so many entries and so many good entries. I think that was the most encouraging. It shows a lot of initiatives. I hope we can promote some of them in the weeks and months to come. And I think it's a very well-deserved winner, especially for the airlines. The whole SAF discussion is an important one. So again, pleased to see them win and pleased to see so many good entries.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And the next announcement, please, with the next slide, Rachel, is the second category of sustainability awards, is for the small business startup category, where the jury have elected or voted on and appointed, selected 3 finalists. These 3 finalists will actually be invited to San Francisco to make presentations on their various initiatives, and then the audience will add their votes to the votes we already have from the jury to appoint the overall winner, who will get a $10,000 prize. The 2 runners-up will get $2,500 each. Just a quick synopsis of these initiatives. Mission Go is using unmanned systems for the transport of organs. So they are connecting with medical facilities, and they're using the speed and efficiency of unmanned aircraft to move organs around to avoid the timely, potentially costly, and sometimes quite crucial loss of time, as I say, in particular, when moving organs around large cities, etc. So that is their key focal point. Waves is about actually making the information on sustainability more transparent, and they're using cloud technology to set up a platform where organizations can actually record and report and demonstrate their sustainability credentials in terms of CO2 emissions and other environmental impact. And XFRET is an initiative or project which is looking at a seat bag or a seat container, a container that places in a seat, so that in times of, as we've seen over the last 2 years, times of in-cargo or in-cabin approvals for moving of cargo, that there would be perhaps a more efficient way of loading cargo in seats and restraining that cargo. So all 3 are very different initiatives, so it should be a very good series of presentations. And again, the jury's comments were that all of the initiatives, that all of the entries were credible, commendable, and showed there's a lot of innovation in this area and the space in the industry. Stephen?
I can only second what you're saying, Glyn, and what the jury said. A lot of new initiatives. Good to see all these startups being very active. And together with our membership, I think the startups in all areas of the industry, that's also something where we are working on. We want to make sure they also see TIACA as their home and their part of their solution for a lot of things. So again, we were very happy with the results of the awards this year, both in the 2 categories.
Thank you. And we will be issuing press releases that will go out probably today with more details about Glyn and his career, and about the Sustainability Award winner and finalists, so that information should be coming out, I think, either this morning or this afternoon, US Eastern Standard Time. So if we can go on the next slide, please, Rachel. Okay, and perhaps the one after. I think we're getting close to the end, and I just wanted to conclude with a discussion, just to mention, and again, extend an invitation. We hope to see as many of you as possible for next month's 2+2, which is our executive summit, together with the Missy Munchin Transport Logistics Forum America in San Francisco, March 22 to 25. And then later in the year, when we will be in Miami for our Air Cargo Forum at our new home in the Miami Convention Center down in South Beach. And hopefully as many of you as possible can join us in Miami 8th to 10th of November. Stephen, any more questions, any comments on that before I then move to the questions that we had?
No, anything else we will see in San Francisco. So be there, and that's the most important thing.
Great, thank you. So if I may just go to Eric, had a couple of questions. So the first one I'll just read out and say, what are the broader impacts on air cargo you see rippling from the Ukraine conflict? For all cargo operators based in Ukraine, can they still operate without a home base? From other countries, you can get their fleets out. Well, this is actually a very crucial question. I think we've already seen in the last few months since the escalation around Ukraine, the price of oil has risen dramatically, as it always does, potential times of conflict, which has, of course, put up the cost of all modes of transport. It's actually fueling as well the increase in inflation, which is actually then making it more difficult from a financial economic perspective, because increased inflation is likely to see governments then raise interest rates and try and control the money supply situation. So we do see there is a serious potential knock-on effect with regards to that aspect. The airlines, much of the air cargo coming in and out of Ukraine over the last 12 to 18 months had already been dropping quite dramatically. Quite a lot more of the cargo that is moves out of Ukraine is mostly grain-based or minerals and petroleum and oil-based products, which often come out via sea borders or land borders. So we would see those expected to also be impacted, because of course there's very few borders right now that are actually open. It's only really into Poland and south to Romania. I think the situation with aircraft, and I saw that sadly some of the airports were actually being impacted today. There was a couple of bombs being set off, so that they often impact there. I know that most states have issued do not fly notices to anywhere near Ukrainian airspace. So I think you can actually see that flights in and out have obviously stopped. Flights over have obviously stopped. I think there's martial law now, so people are actually confined to homes. So sadly, the economy is going to be severely impacted. I did try to get some information beforehand as to location, for example, of Antonovs and where the aircraft were. Many of these are operating on ACMI and charters around the world. So I haven't been able to locate exact locations, but we hope that very few, if any, were in the country, and they hopefully had been located outside, because it's a very tense situation. Following up that question, Eric, also with regards to cybersecurity, one of the really interesting aspects of the invasion this morning was it was preceded with one of the most serious and prolonged cyber attacks possible. Ukraine is actually, over the last 2 years, I was reading that it's probably the most cyber attacked country. And there's two different types of attacks. There's some of the attacks which we saw sadly with Expeditors and others, previously Maersk, etc., where the cyber attack is really whether or not they're using ransomware is to kind of access control. So the data is not lost, but it's just not able to be accessed. And key core components of operating systems are actually, as it were, blind to the operator. What we saw, or what happened in Ukraine, is actually a slightly more serious attack, which is what they actually attack is complete data systems and data deletions. So they don't go and actually intend for it to eventually be reopened. The cyber attacks that were being experienced here was really to wipe out all the information that's being contained, which could impact, and I'm not looking at our industry now, but if you look at the social aspect, which means public health records, even things like pension records for the state, it's really designed to cripple not just the financial ability of the organization, the banking systems, all of the various different regulatory systems by just complete eradication of data. Now, the reason why that is actually quite a serious move forward, because it shows the level of sophistication that exists out there. So I think that the key aspect of this question, and like all of you, I've probably been reading on the Expeditors website about the impact that it's having on their business and on their customers, and how they're trying to actually recover as much as they can and resort to backup plans. But even an organization as Expeditors, which have one of probably the most robust technical systems that they've been operating in-house, developing, they had some very solid firewalls and protective measures in place, but it sadly shows the sophistication now that the cyber attackers are using. It is an area that we will be focusing on in San Francisco. Cybersecurity is crucial, particularly as we go through as an industry and as society, and we rely much more on the data. And I think that that's something that we all have to really focus on. I don't have any details on the Swissport attack other than again what I read through, but I think, Eric, you raise a very important and very concerning issue for the industry. I don't know, Stephen, if you'd like to add anything more there.
Yeah, I don't think it's up to us to indeed talk about details on industry or members. I think it's up to them. But for me, it's like sustainability. I think that cybersecurity is on the agenda for many people in any industry already. And lately, with these attacks being very visible, it just shows that if today you are a company without any focus on cybersecurity, you have an issue. In every country, every day you can read about cybersecurity or companies being blocked, asking for money, and that goes to very little companies up to big companies. So cybersecurity is a society problem today, not a specific air cargo problem.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we've just had another question from Charlie, which is how will the Russia-Ukraine conflict drag or impact recovery of air cargo? I think it's a broader question than air cargo.
Difficult to judge what the conflict will be. How is it going to evolve in the next few days, weeks, and months? So it's just the first day. So I think it's going to be very important. But you're also going to say something. So please go ahead, Glyn.
Well, I was just going to say exactly the same as that, Stephen. But sadly, the longer it drags on, and that's one question which, at the moment, the end site or the end game has been stated by President Putin. He's indicated what he would like to see happen, which doesn't indicate a short conflict. But ultimately, any time of conflict, if you look historically, what will happen, as we've already mentioned, the price of oil goes up, the impact on the consumer behavior in other states, the markets you can expect to see having a negative impact. Sadly, in times of conflict, the potential have ramifications to extend or expand is there could be a knock-on effect to consumer spending. We already have a concern about rising inflation. So it's more of a question, not just on air cargo, but what could be the broader impact on the global economy. Particularly, as you know, if you look at how much, and we don't know yet what the further sanctions could be, but that could also impact in things in terms of gas and oil supplies. And there's quite a major number of European economies which take a large amount of energy coming from Russia. So, it's something I think we all look at with concern.
Uncertainty is not good for the economy, and if economy is not good, air cargo is not doing good. It's a very logical equation.
Exactly. So Rachel, if we can go just to the one last slide, please, I think, which is just okay, there was one more after that, which is the thank you. And we'll just open it up to if there's any last questions on any topic, even if it was just to say whether or not you felt this was of use. Would you like to see it again? We like the idea of doing this each year to let you know, again, what we're planning for the course of the year. We also would like to hold open media sessions during our events as well. We're always available to answer any questions that you may have 24/7. Stephen's available 24/7. I obviously do less hours. But if it's something that you would like to see us continue, we're happy to do it. We always have maintained that our relationship with the media is crucial. We want to be as transparent and as open with you as we can, because our membership are reading your publications, and they all value them. So we thank you for the great work that you do. And if there's anything you'd like to add to that, Stephen?
No, thanks for all the work, Glyn, and the team. It was really good to see that we're on the right path and that we can share it. For me, very important, membership driven, transparent, and open to everybody. That is our mission and our goal. And again, I look forward to exchange, and also in future, any questions, media never hesitate to reach out to us on anything. Is it about the industry? Is it about TIACA? Is it about something that goes on? Please talk to us. I've read a few years ago one journalist writing that we did not answer to his question, a question we never got. We made one promise: we will never leave any message or any question unanswered. So please reach out to us, and then we look forward to collaborate.
Thank you, Stephen. So with that, we thank everybody for their time today. We hope everybody stays well. We look forward to welcoming as many of you as possible to San Francisco. If you want more details, please drop an email to Kenneth, Rachel, or myself. And the same for the Miami event, where we hope to get the whole industry back together again. Okay, with that, we thank you very much and have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever in the world you may be.